And we're live, talking about the third episode of Blake 7, Cygnus Alpha. And this is one of the episodes that I think this is the episode that completes setting up one part of Blake 7. There's some other episodes down the line in a couple of episodes' time which show you who they're up against. So, what did you think of it, Jeff?
Well, did you want to summarize it first, or?
Well, okay. For those people that want to know, I can read through the plot summary. Okay, we've got here the plot summary of Cygnus Alpha. London, that's the name of the ship, prison ship, lands the remaining prisoners on Cygnus Alpha, where they encounter Kara, a priestess of the religious group that rules the planet. Kara, just a little editorializing there, if that's the right word, was played by Pamela Salem, and she was in one of your favourite Doctor Who stories, I think, Jeff. Pamela Salem. I think she was in Robots of Death. Right. Okay, they encounter Kara, a priestess of the religious group that rules the planet. Meanwhile, Blake, Avon, and Jenna explore the alien ship, which acquires the name Liberator after its enigmatic computer Zen communicates telepathically with Jenna. They discover a teleport system, and Blake goes down to Cygnus Alpha to offer the other prisoners the chance to come with them. When he finds them, he learns that everyone who lands on Cygnus Alpha develops a disease, the Curse of Cygnus, necessitating regular doses of a drug, and thus they cannot leave the planet. Blake is captured, taken to the High Priest, Vargas, and when he refuses to give Vargas the Liberator, is tortured and imprisoned. Most of the other prisoners are uninterested in escape, but Gan, Villa, Selman, and Arco, together with Blake, plot to disrupt a human sacrifice by staging a battle, during which Selman and Arco are killed. Jenna teleports the survivors back up, accidentally bringing Vargas along. She teleports him into space, killing him, after he has revealed that the disease is not fatal and the drugs are placebos. So, what did you think of it, Jeff?
Sorry, I'll be back in a second. I thought it was going to take longer than that. Last time when you read the thing, you talked a lot longer, so.
Yeah, I may have read it out from a different source. I can't remember. Maybe. But I'm on a bit. Oh, that's okay. I mean,
I'll be right back.
That's fine. I've got right now, folks. I've got my tongue is a bit sore. Ooh, what has he been doing with his tongue? My tongue is a bit sore, and I've got a very large tongue, people, and it's catching on my teeth, so it's a little bit sore at the moment. So. So what we're going to talk about in this is something of note is, in fact, while Jeff's not here, it might be good to mention this. In this episode, you see Gan kill.
Yeah, I thought I was going to find it before you finished that description. It took me a little bit longer than that.
Wow. You know, as you sat down, I thought, oh no, there'd been an accident. As you caught the...
What?
I thought there'd been a terrible accident for a split second. The intuitive's mind.
From me sitting down?
Yeah, because it was just the way the sound went on the mic on your iPad.
Yeah, okay, folks, I'm fat, so, I come down pretty hard.
No, it was just because sometimes you can just catch a mic and there's a really loud noise, and it almost sounded a bit like the BBC noise sometimes.
Well, I'm sorry.
Except without that,
Um,
it was interesting though.
but all of that was just for me to say that Robots of Death. The last time that the last ranking I could find is my 39th favorite story of Doctor Who. So.
Oh, I did not know that. I thought you really liked it.
Oh, I do. There's a lot of episodes of Doctor Who.
Mm.
I gave Robots of Death an 8 out of 10, so it ranks definitely in the above average category.
It's above all the X-Files episodes.
Well, yeah.
Probably that you've seen.
My average score for a Doctor Who story is 7, so 7 out of 10. So I have more stories ranked 7 than anything else. So yeah, Robots of Death was 39, but and that'll change maybe because as I see new ones, then I update the rankings. Oh, I mean, I was for a while. This is I don't know how old this is, and the last time I ranked them. Okay, it says as of season 20 completed, so I wasn't. That wouldn't include, I guess the last of the Fifth Doctor wouldn't be included in that. So.
Do you? So let me just get this right. So do you check? Oh, that's something we could have done. While we're at it, we can ask you for ratings of episodes 1 and 2 of Blake 7.
The first one I'd probably give about a 7, maybe that's 6.
Okay. Ooh, okay, that's fair enough.
Somewhere around there.
That's fair enough.
Second one probably between 5 and 6.
Ooh.
And the third one would be 3 out of 10.
Ooh. Ooh. Ooh, dear me. It does get better.
You have a lot of oohs in response to things.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because on one of the Doctor Who forums anyway, they used to, when they had like the ratings for stories, they had like a consistent thing they would put after the number between 1 and 10. I don't remember all of them, but I remember there was one that just said, after whatever the number was, it said like, just not my cup of tea or something like that. Yeah. I thought that was actually kind of a good thing because it's like, there can be things where you don't watch it and you say, this is bad. You just say that I can understand how someone would probably enjoy this a lot more than I do. And that's kind of the way I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean,
there are certain elements that it's like I don't fault things for being what they are, if that makes any sense. And like I've read reviews, like music reviews, where the review was terrible because they gave a bad score to an album, for instance, and their reasons for doing so were that the reviewer basically doesn't like that kind of music, which to me is stupid, because if you're going to review a certain kind of music, you should, if for like a national publication, like that was Entertainment Weekly, then you need to get somebody who does like that kind of music.
Yeah, exactly.
Then they rate it as, how it stands up against other things of that genre.
Exactly.
So the whole thing was basically just a bashing of the type of music it was, instead of, taking it for what it is. So, I feel that way. Then that's why I've never rated the new Doctor Who series episodes, because I feel like I can't really do it, because it's more like there's some fundamental flaws in it, but then I can come across one where I'm like, okay, for the standard they've set, this is a better one, or this is a worse one.
It's like, for me, I just don't like the tone. The tone is not my cup of tea.
Right. And so that's, so far about Blake 7, I feel somewhat that way about it, in that I can find the things where I'm like, okay, this is a cool element to this. But then there are things that are also like a turnoff to me. And that, is true of Doctor Who as well, because there were some stories that suffered from certain elements of them. Like, as I'm looking up and down this list since obviously I know Doctor Who a lot better than Blake 7, I can I can find things like, okay, there was a story, The Mask of Mandragora. Okay.
Yeah.
Overall, it was a pretty good story. I think I rated that one a 7, probably. But there's a history of stories for whatever reason on Doctor Who where I call them the chanting people ones. And I don't tend to like those stories as much when they focus on that. Like any of the time that they're focusing on these random people in religious groups or cults or whatever,
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
chanting or having ceremonies and things that are like I find that kind of thing either boring or off-putting, and sometimes some of both. And so in this episode, that part was all kind of annoying to me, and it's
Yeah.
like they always make them over the top. They make the guy
Yeah.
who's like, I'm I'm this leader of this group, and you know I've been for this many years I've been in control of everything because I told everybody there was some disease
Yeah.
when there really
Uh,
isn't.
and the rules. And you get this in Doctor Who as well. It's science versus religion, and religion is always portrayed as a form of social control. We get elements of that in Doctor Who as
it's
well.
not that I'm
Also,
not cynical or reality accepting enough to realize that there are people who do that, because of course there are. But yeah, it does get kind of tedious when you have it always as like it's portrayed as, oh well, the religious people are like the backwards ones who won't accept reality or whatever. They want to cling to some thing that's trying to control people or whatever.
in the writer's defense, is part of the setup in that you got the first episode where Blake's captured. The second episode is on the ship. This is where they were going to. Cygnus Alpha, a prison planet.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I don't find that. The bits I find good is the stuff on the Liberator when they're investigating the Liberator and finding out about the Liberator. What did you think about that half of it? Oh dear, significant pause.
Well, I'm trying to think of what all was involved in that, other than just them like discovering that they could like talk to the computer or whatever. Which was
There's that interesting thing with the guns. Oh, it's hot, oh, it's cold, all that kind of stuff. Well, that was quite interesting. And then working out how the teleport works.
Another fault, I guess, is that the characters in the first couple of episodes, I know it's hard to judge on 2 episodes, but it seemed like they changed their personalities a little bit in episode 3. And that was kind of jarring because you have, first of all, I said before in the second episode, I thought it was a little bit weird how quick people just did what Blake told them to. Because to me, he doesn't really come off as that strong of a leader type. Like so far, he doesn't seem very charismatic. He doesn't seem like he really commands attention from people. Now, supposedly, according to the backstory, he was some sort of leader. But in what they've shown of him with the prisoners, I mean, I put myself as a prisoner on that ship. I don't have any reason to listen to that guy. So it seemed, but I guess this particular band of smarmy white people was, on board pretty quickly. But the girl,
Jenna?
blank on her name again. Jenna, yeah. She seemed like in the first 2 episodes, she kind of had this kind of coolness to her. And I mean coolness like, she wasn't particularly fazed by anything. She could spring into action when she needed to, but she was kind of sure of herself and, kind of oozed confidence and just, I'm a cool customer. I know how to handle things. And in this episode, she seems a little bit too, I'm not going to say too emotional, because coming from me, obviously that would be silly, but she just seems a little bit like and I don't know, maybe in the first 2 she was putting on a facade, and maybe she just drops the facade in this one, a little bit. But that's how it came across, as her being kind of randomly different than how she had been. And with Avon, it was kind of the same thing. Like he kind of goes back and forth between seeming like he's this ruthless, guy just out for himself, and seeming like he actually sort of has a conscience. So it's like, and I'm not saying that that in itself is like an inconsistency, because you can have real people that obviously sort of seem to waver back and forth between that. But he seemed a little bit harder to figure in this one. So I guess what I would say is
That's a good thing, though.
the
A
character
character that's
seemed a
hard to
little bit
figure.
more all over the map, and it was like a combination. You had the characters of like the religious figures that were sort of stock characters that didn't really have anything to them.
Yeah.
And then you know, and then most of the prisoners are basically like that too. Like when you mentioned in the summary, like the names of the other people that came with them, I didn't even remember who those guys were, what their names were, what they looked like, anything.
Yeah.
Because the only reason I probably remember Gan is because he's the big guy, and then I remember Squirrely because he's been in, you know, he was there from the start.
Yes, that's Villa Vestal people.
Yeah, the other
The
ones
thief.
I don't even remember. So far, where you got Blake, you know, you got Avon, the computer guy, and you got the chick, you got Squirrely, you got Big Guy, and then a couple other random people, I guess.
And in the next episode is Jenna is the main focus of the next episode, and she looks good in that episode. She's like, she wears some good clothing. She looks good in that episode.
We had her first costume change, I think, in this episode when she changed her outfit. So you could clearly see the priority of, you know, the people doing the show is, well, if nothing else, we need to make sure that the chick looks good at all times.
Yeah, she like wears tight pink jeans in the next.
Which is funny because it also makes me think of Doctor Who, where you had Victoria, the character who, you know, went from one story
Victorian.
Thinking that it was hugely inappropriate for someone to have like their legs showing, to her in the next story like changing into like a 60s miniskirt looking thing.
Yeah, because that was at the beginning. Yeah.
So I know you can say, well, maybe some time has gone by, but you know, it still seems like a little bit of a strong change there, that she would be endorsing the drop in the dress code.
Yeah, it's but if she was an artisan,
yeah, well, and Jamie also goes from seeming like he's flirting pretty heavily with her in the same story, to in the next one not even noticing her new outfit.
So that's what the writers did not get the memo.
He gave up on her pretty quick.
Because the way Doctor Who was made, folks, is that the writers were pretty much, they weren't on staff. They had scripts which were commissioned, so it wasn't like they had an in-house writing team where everything was coordinated.
Yeah, they did have a story editor though that was supposed to be the person that would reconcile those things and say, okay, this is, you know, what we need to do to get the characters consistent. And some of them were better than others. I'll just put it that way.
Yes, but Robert Holmes was the man in that area. And Andrew Cockle.
I would say the team of Barry Letts and Terrence Dix.
TD, love TD.
Yeah, were really good at that. Peter Bryant, maybe not so much. May have suffered a little bit in that area. And he, of course, was a script editor and then became producer, so he filled both of those roles. But anyway, we got off track on Doctor Who, but yeah, you know, and that's some of it may be my mood also. It just maybe, you know, you asked me earlier like whether I felt like watching it, and the answer really is not that much. So it could have been that you know, there's a part of me obviously that, you know, I still want to be entertained by something if I'm taking the time to watch it. But there's probably a little bit of prejudice there where I'm like, so far, you know, this thing hasn't really shown me a lot, so I'm waiting for something to really entertain me, and it hasn't really happened yet. And like I said, there's moments that happen where I'm like, okay, this part's kind of cool. But you know, if I did not have an incentive to continue, you know, if this was just a random show I'd happened across, I probably wouldn't continue watching it. But there's a few reasons why I would continue watching it. One is because even though you and I obviously don't have exactly the same taste in things, I do have a certain amount of some word I can't think of. So a certain amount of respect for your opinion of things, where I'm probably more willing to give something a chance on your recommendation than I would some people. And also because we've kind of done this exchange thing where you're watching the Homicide episodes, and I love that show so much that I wouldn't want there to be something where you had an incentive to say, well, you don't want to watch this, so I'm not going to watch your show anymore. So it's that factors in also.
Yeah. Well, Blake said it does get a lot better, and it's just that, like I said, it was sort of like hamstrung by the fact that they had to go to the prison planet.
Yeah, well, I hope you're right. I'm not wanting to dislike it.
Well, we'll find out in about an hour once you've watched the next episode.
Yeah,
because
I like I said, I am pickier nowadays in terms of usually there's so many things I already know I like that I'm not going to usually say, waste my time continuing to watch something that I haven't been impressed by, after 3 hours of it. But there are reasons why I would continue to watch this. But
yeah, is it?
But there's probably lots of shows where that's the case. If I thought back to some of the shows I ended up liking a lot as a kid, or young or teenager, young adult, whatever, some of them probably I can think of several that started kind of slow and got a lot better as time went on. So I definitely was. I gave things more of a chance back before there was just so many shows that I knew of,
Yeah.
And there has been some. We talked the other day about shows that sort of have disturbing elements where you might be turned off by that, even if it was a quality show. And I said that I took a break from NYPD Blue for that reason. And another show that I love a lot that I did that with was Everwood, because Everwood had a period of time in the second season where it was so uncomfortably realistic that I actually found myself, like it was hard to watch. It was like there was an emotional draining to watching it where I was like, you know what, I need to take a break from this because this is just making me feel bad every time I watch it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just that it was realistic, it was one of the main characters had made certain choices that, although plenty realistic, were disturbing to me and made me not be able to respect him as a character as much. Not the writers, because they're just, they're saying this is what the character does. It was perfectly realistic for that character to do what he did, but it was not. But I just hated it so much. And then the other side of things, another character was actually, in terms of my respect for her or my enjoyment of the character, it was improving. I liked her better in during that period of time, but it was still, it had its uncomfortable moments because it overall, because of what she was doing, she had a bunch of conflicts with people, and when those conflicts would happen, there'd be a bunch of like yelling arguments and stuff, and they were very, very much similar to things I remember from my time growing up with my family. So they kind of hit very close to home. So anyway, yeah, that's so there's lots of reasons why I can want to watch or not want to watch a television show that aren't necessarily all about the actual quality, writing, production, and all that of the show. I mean, as far as like the acting, I can't really get on anybody too much for that, because most likely the religious leader guy was probably directed to be over the top guy. I mean, I can't fault
he's always like that. He's always like that.
Well, I don't know anything about that guy, so
Brian Blessed is always like that.
Well, then even if that's the case, then I still can't completely blame him, because if he was cast with the knowledge that he's always like that, then that's what they wanted. So
and many you've seen American televangelists. They can be some pretty big personalities.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying that there aren't people like that. I'm just saying I don't enjoy watching it.
I think it's quite funny how Ted Cruz actually appears like he's picked because I think his father's an evangelist.
No, yeah,
And he's
and I said
picked
he's
up
one.
certain elements in his delivery.
Yeah, he's
And
one
he's
part
like,
Jimmy Swaggart. I said that before.
yeah, it's like he looks like he's sometimes in some deliveries. It's like he's giving a sermon or something, or he's
Yeah,
being an
and
evangelist,
the
a TED evangelist.
one time that I have seen Ted Cruz live in 2012 when he was running for the Senate, uh, the way he did his speech, he was not at a podium. He was on stage, but he had a mic, like I guess, pinned to his suit or whatever, and so he walked around the stage, but he didn't seem to do it in a very natural way. It seemed like he um he started the speech facing one way, and then it was like the mental script he was going from, because I don't think he actually had a teleprompter. It's one thing I respect about Ted Cruz is he can do speeches
Yeah,
from memory. And what his mental script told him though, okay, it's time to walk over to this other spot and do the next part. So that part of it was kind of robotic. It was like, oh, okay, 1, 2, 3, move here. Next part of speech, 1, 2, 3, move
you see,
here, and
that's
he
how he
would.
might have memorized it. He might be.
Yeah, it very well
Yeah,
could be. Yeah, I mean, it
yeah.
definitely seemed like he had rehearsed it for sure. Um, but
We
anyway,
ain't
yeah.
we ain't using a script. We ain't using a teleprompter. This is all natural.
Yeah, exactly. I work much better not from a script, and there are other people like that, obviously.
Oh yeah.
You and one politician that you've compared me to in the past, Mr. Clinton. Again, he did obviously make some speeches from teleprompters, but he delivered quite a few extemporaneous remarks as well, so where he
Yeah, because
didn't
like I
have a
said,
script.
by the time you're that age, and if you know the issues really well, you should just be able to just talk extemporaneously, as you say.
Yeah, and one other thing Clinton was good at is it actually usually worked in his favor when he would do those one-on-one interviews, because he would usually come off in his responses with knowing what he was talking about, whether or not you
Oh yeah.
agreed with what his policy decisions were. He didn't come off as you're going to throw questions at him that he doesn't have any idea what he's
Uh,
talking about. He knew
uh,
he knew the issues, as you said.
I like giving Bill Clinton as an example of an ESFP because it's an example of an ESFP that goes beyond the stereotype. And
Well,
so you
yeah,
can
I
show
mean,
people what a
he
smart ESFP can look like.
he and Reagan, because I mean, you can take two presidents that were within pretty short time frame within each other. Both served 2 terms. Both were
Oh yeah,
one was 80s, one was 90s, but they were still not that long after each other. So you can see that
yeah, 4 years.
despite their differences in policy, political parties and stuff, philosophies, you can see that both of them, yeah, were not just party, all that
Yeah, yeah.
stereotypes we have. Yes,
What we have to say though is that in order for Bill Clinton to get elected, he very much moved towards the centre, and he had the help of Ross Perot. Because I don't think Bill Clinton got over
Well,
50%
and I
of the
think he
vote.
didn't really have far to move in the sense that when he was governor of Arkansas, he was seen as a centrist for the most part.
Yeah,
So when he was in the Democratic primaries, he was trying to appeal more to some of the left, of his party, because you have to have some of them to get elected in the first place. But he also was actually one of the advantages, other than Ross Perot, was at the time when he started running, George Bush was very popular.
yeah,
And so
he was extremely.
none of the top Democrats wanted to run against him. So
Ah,
Clinton actually didn't have much competition for the nomination. The so-called bigwigs of the party all were like, no, I'm not going to do it, because none of them thought that Bush was beatable at the time. So he didn't really have to do a whole lot of appealing to the left wing, because it was kind of like he was saying, hey, you can nominate a Jesse Jackson type person if you want to, but then we're just going to lose again. If you want to win this election, then I'm your guy. So he actually was kind of moving the party more towards the center. At least that was
yeah.
the.
apparently there was this think tank that Bill Clinton was involved in
Mm-hmm.
before he actually ran for president. This think tank that moved towards the center.
Yeah, he was part of the Democratic Leadership Council that, had other people like Paul Simon and Sam Nunn and guys like that.
And they had a connection with the New Labour people in the UK with Tony Blair that when they moved to the centre as well, because they actually had people around. They had some British Labour people watching the election in 1992.
Yeah,
and
so he had the rhetoric, down as far as he still appealed to the left wingers because he said all the hope and change stuff, and he said he was going to give everybody health care, and he ticked a few boxes enough to get people, of those people on his side. At the same time, he appealed to middle America by saying, look, I'm not some loony left wing dude who's trying to force all this crap on you. I'm a reasonable guy who's going to go in there and fix the economy. And so,
you can always, and the advantage you have is you can always say, look at my record in Arkansas.
Right. Yeah. He'd been governor for 12 years, so it was all out there, and the Republicans.
Well, not all of it.
Well,
not everything.
I mean, as far as his public record was easy to find, is what I'd say. And the Republicans chose to focus mainly on more of the personal stuff. Called him a draft dodger, said he might have had affairs, and they focused on those kind of things and less on the record as governor, because like I said, his record was not like some loony left-wing thing. Now they did talk about the tax increases, but that's the thing, is he didn't make any secret of the fact that he was going to raise taxes. It was part of his platform. So at the time, a lot of changes had happened in the economy between 84 and 92. So when Mondale was running saying he was going to raise taxes, at the time, people weren't going to listen to that. They were going to be like, hey, there's no reason to do that. But by 92, there were people that bought the line that, well, if you don't raise taxes, you're not going to be able to fix the economy.
Yeah, especially when they promise to raise taxes on other people.
Right, yeah. You always try to make it appear as if, well, it's not going to be you. It'll be the rich people.
Yeah.
It'll be people richer than you. And there's a talk show host, Michael Berry, who, he's had a caller on that was one of the Bernie Sanders supporters. And basically, he was trying to, because the thing is, you can't seem to ever pin him down when you say, okay, what is the income level where you're, not paying your fair share? Or where's this part where you're the ones we have to stick it to and take your money? Because he was asking, well, how much do you make? And he was a guy who made over $100,000 a year. But then when it came down to, okay, well, you can give more to the government if you choose to. That's a lot of people don't point out, is that you can voluntarily pay more in taxes than the government tells you have to if you're worried about the government doesn't have enough revenue. But the guy was like, well, I'm not talking about, me personally. I'm saying, there's these people getting away with these loopholes and things. And Susan's like, oh, okay, so you mean the people who make more than 100,000? Yeah, your amount, you're all right. It just needs to be those richer people. So,
I always have a problem when laws are supposed to apply equally. When you're voting for a law that doesn't apply to you, that's a bit dodgy. And that's effectively what you have when you're applying for a law to tax somebody else rather than you.
Yeah, I mean, I've always looked at that as, well, if you are going to vote for taxing somebody else, then you should also, in response to that, be able to offset that by voting for what you think the money should be spent on. You could say, okay, well, we'll make a deal. I'll pay more in taxes if you guarantee that my tax money doesn't go to sell, or doesn't go to give weapons to, rebels in Pakistan or something like that, Any of those little things you can pick out and say, okay, well, start picking and choosing where the money goes. That's why I'm doing this thing, online game called Nation States, and I did it a while back, but Morgan said some things that reminded me of it, and I was like, oh, you might like this. And so we both created new countries for it, and it's got a lot of flaws in it, but it can be fun because basically it's a thing where you set up a country, and then the stuff it says about your country is based on your responses to issues. It's basically gives you these issues that your government has to deal with, and then based on which of the options you choose, it has certain effects on your country. Um, and most of them are never going to be what I would actually, if I was setting up a country and had control of the government, wouldn't be what would happen, because there are all of these options that are like sort of the tried and true options of the governments that I don't like the way they operate. And they don't take into account someone who wants a government that basically says the people can do what they want, and if there's disputes, then they can solve them with among themselves until it becomes something that actually threatens the actual health of the country in some way, or threatens me as the government. But
Right.
beyond that, I'm not going to pass piddly little laws, because I don't believe everything should be dictated from federal government thing. Trying to do that, I think, is a bad idea. Unless you have a very tiny
Yep.
country. And the
Yep.
way that this game works, you gain 1 million people a day. So you start out tiny, but you don't stay that way very long.
Well, we could review this game in the future. So this is the Liberator, and the Liberator is in Blake 7, and Blake 7 is the thing that we're reviewing in this episode.
Oh, yeah. I didn't have much else to say about that one, but if you do,
Okay,
go ahead.
because I have we can have a special focus. I'll call this Avon Watch. What did you think of Avon in this episode? You mentioned little things, but what about his, like when he found the jewelry?
The part where he laughed seemed unnatural.
Well, I think the actor might be an ENFJ.
But that was what I meant about the characters seemed to be a little bit different in this episode. But finding it, I didn't even get that it was jewelry. I knew it was something that was worth, that was wealth of some kind.
Yeah.
But they all talk in this kind of way that it's like everybody already is supposed to know everything they're talking about. They don't really explain very much.
Oh, what would you like explained?
I mean, anything. Like, it's just not very... because they don't have they don't have characters that have to be told things. Or if they do, it's the stuff like, okay, when they first got on the prison ship, they had to be told, like, well, here's the rules of the ship and things. So there's stuff like that. But it's like, in 3 episodes, and I realize it's not a long time, they've really told us nothing about the way this universe works. Like, they've said that they came from Earth, so they've indicated this is supposed to be set in the same universe as Earth.
Yeah.
I guess at some point in the future, but they don't really say much about the way anything works, the way the Federation works.
You saw it in the first episode.
Knowing there's some kind of big authoritarian thing.
Yeah.
They don't really go into how anything is set up. How many planets are there people on now? How widespread is any of this? They captured this ship. They say it was in some sort of battle, but they don't tell you much about who was battling and why. What any of that stuff is. And so obviously there's a limit to how much stuff you can stuff into the time. But
yeah.
I find like there's so much, stuff is introduced, and it's like the people just are kind of like take everything in stride. Like this is just because they know what things are like in that universe or whatever, but they don't explain much of it.
Do you want to know the episode is where they actually tell you about where the Liberator came from and the people that
I'll wait and see. I don't want to be told anything in advance.
But there is an episode that exists about that.
I'm just saying my feeling at this point is that it's been hard to follow in a lot of ways. I'll put it that way.
Okay.
And
so
at the same time, it's kind of dragged in some places. So I feel like if you have a show that kind of drags a bit, then I don't buy the excuse that you don't have time to explain things. So I guess I would rather have had more time spent on that than all of the, time on flashy memory weirdness and things like that. Enchanting people.
Right. So what do you want to know about? Time distort stuff? What is it that you want to know about?
Just, I mean, like you said jewelry, and I didn't even remember that's what it was because they spent no time explaining what that was or where it came from or why it was worth a bunch of money.
Well, you know a sensing type. If you look at the screen, you can see what it is.
Well, that's what I mean. It was on the screen for like half a second. And it wasn't like there was this, okay, they found a treasure chest and spent time pulling things out of it for a long time or something. It was just like, okay, he found something and it's worth a bunch. But there was like no...
Well, I could say the same thing about Homicide, where there's like quick stuff in there and you have to pay attention.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I've said before, like, I've seen most of those Homicide episodes several times, and there will still be things that when I watch it again, I'll notice that I didn't notice before. So
it's got a whole glossary of all the things that are in Blake 7, all parts of the world, all the technology in the back of this book, and it's just bits that I mean, all these things that you don't get at the moment, they're sort of repeated, and you'll get them in future episodes. Like
that's good.
Like there's bits that, like for instance, because it's themes, like all this stuff about time distort is obviously it's like the warp factor thing, the things about how the teleport works, the nuances.
I mean, some of it's just maybe I'm not good at paying attention. I said that in the first episode that my attention span, is not always going to catch everything, and there's accents in the voices. I don't always understand the words they're saying, so sometimes that's hard to follow.
That's, I mean, I was like that with the first episode of Homicide. Is when I'm watching the episode, even some of it, I'm not quite catching everything that's being said.
Right, and I think rewatching Homicide, I get more of it than I did the first time through.
It's got good rewatch value, unlike Game of Thrones.
Part of it is that those characters, I know them well enough now that I can pick up kind of where they're going with stuff better. So when I hear the same lines again, then I can follow it better. So
yeah, you're right. The first episode of Homicide is so much in, so many little bits.
Yeah.
And
I mean, the fact that we've done reviews, 4 episodes of Homicide now?
Yeah.
So we're only 4 episodes in, and it seems like we've come a long way from the first episode to me. Just in those first 4, because by that time you already know a lot about the characters.
Right.
But yeah, I'm not trying to come down hard on
as long as you watch,
just being honest about the way I felt.
Well, that is fine. As long as you watch them, that's fine. Because I know they get a lot better.
Yeah, and like I said, I know other shows that's the case with, for sure.
Especially because, like I said, Terry Nation was the main force behind season 1, and then in season 2, out of the 13 episodes, Chris Boucher writes 4 of them, and you have Robert Holmes writing scripts as well.
I'm a little spoiled by the shows that do, just to me, grab you from the first episode. So, like Doctor Who. So
yeah,
I can't remember on Quantum Leap whether I felt that way. I think the first episode might have been really compelling, but I think they might have kind of got a little slow after that, and I sort of had to get back into it because it got better again, but there was sort of a lull.
Yeah,
if I remember right.
Were you enchanted by Dean? Were you enchanted by Dean Stockwell's character?
What do you mean by enchanted?
Did you think, artisan, I like him.
Well,
even unconsciously, this guy, or rather, I like this guy.
I like his character, sure, yeah.
Pretty much. So yeah, that's the spaceship of the Liberator, and you find out more about that in a future episode. All right. So
if you want,
we will.
Us to have time to do the other ones.
Yep.
So I can see it.
Yep. Bye, folks. We'll be back with Jeff and I reviewing the lovely Jenna in the next episode.
All right.
And again.